Now, here's a great statistic. 3/4 of us here in the UK will eat at least one pie every month. But I'm afraid it seems that some of the most commonly available meat varieties can fall far short of what you might call piefection. Sorry about that. Indeed, quite a few of you have contacted us to complain about the very same thing, that when you cut into your pie, it turned out to be all pastry and no filling. So how much meat should a pie contain? Well, it was certainly a lot less than I was expecting. So as we lift the lid on the pie industry, get ready for a few surprises. Pies. We love to make them, bake them, and above all, eat them. Savoury pastries are a red-hot market worth a cool £1 billion a year, and in return for our cash, we expect our pies to deliver. But some Rip-Off Britain viewers have been left, rather unfulfilled by their pies, and they have, I have to say, been surprised that they've been remarkably empty. For example, Terry Penn wrote to say that she was very unhappy that the pie that she cut into contained only ½ an inch of chicken and no vegetables. Similarly, Chris Carr contacted us to say that her pie had barely a dessert spoonful of filling and that all she was really paying for was the pastry and the gravy. And the issue has caused a storm on social media where unimpressed punters regularly post pictures of their less-than-perfect pies. Martin Tarbuck from Wigan is such a fan that he's written several books on the subject, travelling the length and breadth of the UK on a pie pilgrimage, tasting the very best and worst that Britain has to offer. So, who better to tell us what makes the perfect pie?
Can I have a meat and potato pie, please?
Yeah, it's £1.55 then, please.
I would find it difficult to put a figure on how many pies I've eaten, but it's a bit of a Saturday tradition since I've been a small boy, and I'm 43. Most importantly, we want to see them well filled. A pie should be a meal in itself. We don't want any space in there. I like to see a good short crust pastry that you can bite into. I like to see a good quality of filling as well, so a really good quality of meat.
But the pies that some of you have contacted us about are the cheaper ones that you might find on sale in supermarkets. They may not be handcrafted or individually baked, but we do still expect them to be packed with a decent filling. But as Martin knows better than most, that's not always the case.
I've often found that when you bite into the pies that there's not the level of meat content that you would expect from a pie, and there's lots of vegetable or other things to pad it out. I do occasionally get complaints coming in from people who bought a pie from a supermarket and it's not as described, there's nothing in it. Very often it comes down to the content and the taste and the price and the value for money and all those factors, but I think that the level of meat content is always a constant bugbear with people.
So, if the pie expert and our viewers rate the filling as the most important thing to get right, who sets the standards for pie producers to meet? Now, if you thought that it was individual manufacturers who decided what went in to their pie fillings, I'm afraid you'd be wrong. It's actually the responsibility of a government department, DEFRA, the Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, who make that decision. And they've got some pretty precise guidelines on what should actually be going into the fillings. And you might be surprised to hear that a pie that contains only meat must contain just 10 to 12.5% of meat. And if you buy meat and something else, like chicken and vegetable or meat and potato, then the pie only has to be made up of 7% meat to be within the regulations. So I've come to Wolverhampton, a city with a proud pie-making tradition, to see if people here know how little meat is required inside, say, a chicken and vegetable pie. Do you eat pies?
Yes, Angela.
What kind of pies?
I eat chicken pie, I eat steak and kidney pies.
So you're an expert?
Yes.
Right, OK, Una, would you put in that little pot there
Yes.
how much chicken you would expect to get in a pie if it came in a little pot that size?
Yes, I will.
OK, off you go then. Would you put in there for me, from there, how much chicken you would like to be in your pie, please?
Okay. Does this include all the gravy? And...
No, just the chicken. How much chicken you would like in your pie? Got a healthy appetite.
I'd say that much, and the pastry covers the top.
Over the top. So what would you think if I told you that actually all the chicken you need is...
Why is that?
What do you reckon to that then?
That's small.
Really? Seriously?
And that's it.
That's it.
Okay.
What do you reckon?
I think I can get 10 pies out of that.
Each of them put in at least 4 times more chicken than the legal minimum for chicken and vegetable pie. Now, of course, some manufacturers do add more than the minimum, but certainly when it comes to the most widely available commercially produced pies, you'd be hard-pushed to find a meat and veg product with more than 25% meat in the filling. Dr. David Jukes is an expert on food laws and a senior lecturer at Reading University. He's agreed to talk us through the regulations that govern what goes into our pies.
You can have all sorts of different meat contents, and that's the complication for the consumer, that the meat content is very variable. So the question is, how low can it go before it stops being a meat pie? And well, there's legislation on that because it's designed to protect the consumer from somebody claiming that it's a meat pie and then actually putting a very small amount in.
Now, of course, the label on the packaging does make clear how much meat to expect in your pie. But would you be right to assume that the more you pay, the more meat you get? Well, to find out, we're challenging David to see if he can guess whether a pie is gourmet or budget, based just on its ingredients. Well, I'm going to ask you if you can have a look at the ingredients that go into 3 separate pies.
Right.
And one is very high-end, one of them is middle of the range, and one is quite inexpensive.
Okay, I hope
Would
I
you
can
be
tell.
able to tell? do you think?
I will have a look. So this one has got chicken breast 10%. It also has got some vegetables in it, carrot and peas. A bit further down there's some chicken stock, but basically the meat content on average will be about 10%. So I'm guessing, I'm saying that that one is probably the bottom, the cheapest. This one has some roast chicken at 10%. It's also got some extra chicken, 6%, so that adds up to 16%. There's also some vegetables, some onion and so on. So let's say, okay, that's better than the first one you showed me. This one, wow, British chicken breast, 25%. And then it's got some butter and double cream and some other very interesting ingredients. So I'm saying that that's the top end, that's the one. So that's the top one. The one I saw first at the 10% is at the bottom, and this one is in the middle, if I'm right.
You are right, actually, yes. And indeed, the first one is 4 in a pack for £1. So they're what? They're 25p each.
Indeed. Now, you might say that that's providing a product for a certain market.
And the other end of the scale.
At the other end of the scale,
It's over £3 for one pie. Easy as pie for David, who's got it bang on. And based on this small selection, it does seem that the more you pay, the more meat you get. But even at the higher end, you should still generally only expect a quarter of your filling to be meat, making that pricier pie way more expensive. But David says that's okay, as long as shoppers are able to make an informed choice.
you know what the price is when you look on the shelf, you can pick up the product, you can look at the ingredients list. And so as a consumer, that's what the labelling legislation is actually providing. It's ensuring that you as a consumer are given the information that's needed to make that choice.
But how much meat there is in your pie isn't the only concern you've told us about. Alan Mailing got in touch with an entirely different complaint, and this one can't be answered by a look at the label. Alan says whenever he opens up one of his precious pastries, a lot of what he finds inside is quite literally hot air. So I was keen to get a closer look at how some manufacturers are able to produce pies in bulk, but without compromising on quality, packing them with filling and not, as Alan found, too much air. Here in Britain, we produce literally hundreds of millions of pies every year. Many of them are made in buildings like this one behind me. This is an award-winning pie factory that's based in Wolverhampton, where every day they make thousands of pies from scratch which then go out to farm shops and quality food outlets all over the country. What they don't know about pie making isn't worth knowing, and they're about to give me a masterclass in how to produce the perfect pie. In this one factory alone, around 190,000 pies a month roll off this production line. Mike has worked here for a number of years, and he'll be my guide around the factory floor. Now, just briefly talk me through the process. What happens?
Well, the pastry guys will do various mixes. They will then hand cut every lid for whatever size pie we're making on the day. You've got our meat fillings, which are being cooked at the same time. They will literally come onto this machine, which you see here. It's a semi-automated line. When they're making handmade products, they'll fill the pie. They'll work to a specification. There's a set of scales behind them. They will check the weight of every pie they're manufacturing. If it's underweight, which I very much doubt it, it will not go through to the cook area.
Next, it's that all-important filling, which here has above average levels for meat, up to 32% of the pie. How do you maintain a level of meat to vegetable, fruit, or whatever it is you're putting in them?
The calculations will be automatically calculated for what carrots we have to put in, onions, swede, parsnips. It's all done automatically. The girls will then work to that recipe. The operators on the machines here, if they notice that the fill hasn't gone into the pie properly, the pie's removed.
By insisting that each and every product is checked by hand, Mike is also keeping a lid on the quality. Which is why he's confident that the pies produced here won't have the sort of problems that you've been contacting us about. We've had people write to us and tell us that they bought pies in a shop and there's just a tiny bit of filling in the bottom and the rest of it is air. How does that happen?
You'll probably find that some of these larger scale manufacturers, they don't have the amount of staff operating these very, very modern machines. So you'll literally may only get one person on a machine that's half a mile long. Pies can probably slip through the system. They're automatically packed by the machine as well.
Well, in this case, the proof of the pudding is very much in the filling. Time to crack open one of the pies produced here to see if it does live up to Mike's promises.
That's a steak and potato. That's steak and kidney.
There's no air at all there, is there? I mean,
Well,
there's no
next to
room
nothing.
at all between
Not
the pastry
really,
and
no.
the top.
There has been a little bit of shrinkage, but it's full to the top.
And there's loads of meat in there. And here you have it, a lovely meat and potato pie, all finished, ready to be packed, and then sent off to be enjoyed, who knows, perhaps even by you. Sadly, though, not all pies are quite so well filled. So to be sure you're getting what you expect, keep an eye on the labels and even the name, because as pie expert Martin says, you'll find examples where things have ended up rather the wrong way round.
You notice that a lot of pies now are called potato and meat rather than meat and potato, but if that's what we're paying for, then that's what we should be getting in our pie.